Did you know Vikings weren't just about raiding and pillaging? What if their sagas held tales of heartbreak and devotion from the Viking Age that would make your jaw drop? Prepare to uncover 7 incredible love stories from a time of fierce warriors and even fiercer hearts. Number 7. Gudrun Osvifrsdottir and Kjartan Olafsson. The air in Iceland, even in the summer, carried a crisp edge, a reminder of the raw power of the land. It was a place where reputations were forged in fire and ice, and where beauty was a legend spoken of in hushed tones. And in the valley of Lexardal, at Lager, lived a woman whose beauty became the subject of countless verses and whispered tales. Gudrun Osvifrsdottir. The Laxdæla Saga, one of the great Icelandic sagas, speaks of a remarkable presence, describing her hair as long and flowing, a golden cascade that reached her waist, shining like spun sunlight. She was known not just for her looks, but for her sharp mind and strong will. A woman who knew her worth in a society that valued both strength and wit. Gudrun, even in her youth, had already experienced the complexities of life and love. She had been married more than once, each time a reflection of the intricate social tapestry of the Viking Age. Her first marriage, a child's union, was dissolved. Her second, to Thord Ingunnarsson, ended tragically when he drowned, leaving her a young widow with a deep understanding of loss. Yet through it all, her spirit remained unbroken, her renown only growing across the island. People traveled from far and wide just to catch a glimpse of the woman who embodied the very essence of Icelandic grace and power. Then into this world stepped Kjartan Olafsson, a man destined to challenge Gudrun's fate. Kjartan was no ordinary Viking. He was the son of Olaf Peacock, a chieftain of immense wealth and influence whose estate at Hjardarholt was a beacon of prosperity. Kjartan himself was described in the sagas as a paragon of Viking manhood. He was tall, strong, and handsome, with a cheerful demeanor that drew people to him. More than that, he was a skilled warrior, a clever strategist, and a master of all the martial art. He was a man of great promise, admired by everyone who met him, a true leader among his peers. The Laxdæla Saga does not merely list his attributes, it paints a picture of a man destined for greatness, a hero of his own time, whose arrival would stir the very foundations of Gudrun's world. Their paths crossed, as often happened in the close-knit communities of Iceland, at a gathering or perhaps through mutual acquaintances. It was not a sudden, explosive love, but a deep, growing affection, rooted in mutual respect and admiration. Gudrun, with her intelligence and beauty, found herself drawn to Kjartan's charm and strength. He, in turn, was captivated by her spirit and her striking looks. They spent hours together, sharing stories, laughter, and a quiet understanding that blossomed into something profound. Their bond became evident to all who saw them, a powerful connection that promised a future of happiness and prestige. Their families, both prominent and influential, looked favorably upon this developing relationship, seeing the potential for a powerful alliance between two of Iceland's most esteemed lineages. However, a shadow lurked in the wings. A figure equally close to Kjartan and equally smitten with Gudrun, Bolli Thorleikson. Bolli was Kjartan's cousin, his foster brother, and his closest friend. They had grown up together, shared childhood adventures, and faced dangers side by side. Bolli was also a formidable man in his own right, brave and loyal, but unlike Kjartan, he possessed a quiet intensity, a hidden depth of emotion that could easily turn to jealousy. He too had fallen for Gudrun's allure, and the strength of his feelings was no less potent than Kjartan's. Perhaps even more so because of its suppressed nature. He watched the burgeoning romance between his beloved cousin and the woman he secretly adored with a growing sense of despair, a quiet storm brewing within him. The sagas often portray the intricate web of kinship and loyalty in Viking society. And in this instance, it became a tangled mess of conflicting desires. The turning point came when Kjartan announced his intention to travel abroad, to Norway, a journey common for young Viking noblemen seeking fame, wealth, and experience. He sought to visit the court of King Olaf Haraldsson to gain favor and enhance his standing. It was a rite of passage, a necessary step for a man of his ambition. Gudrun was distressed by his departure, sensing a shift in the currents of their destiny. She asked him to take her with him, to marry her before he left to solidify their bond. But Kjartan, perhaps focused on his grand ambitions, or perhaps adhering to the custom of proving oneself abroad before settling down, declined, promised to return to be true to her and to make her his wife upon his return. This decision, seemingly practical at the time, would prove to be a grave misstep, a crack in the foundation of their burgeoning love story. Kjartan's journey to Norway was indeed successful. He found favor with King Olaf, distinguishing himself with his skills and wisdom. He spent a significant amount of time at the king's court, learning and growing, becoming an even more accomplished leader. While Kjartan was away, Bolli remained in Iceland, continued to visit Gudrun, offering comfort and companionship. He was a constant presence in her life, a sympathetic ear, a strong hand when needed. He slowly, subtly began to sow seeds of doubt in her mind regarding Kjartan's return. He spoke of the king's favor, the temptations of foreign courts, the length of Kjartan's absence. He hinted that Kjartan might have found another, a woman of higher standing in Norway, or that he might simply have forgotten her in the pursuit of greater glory. Gudrun, isolated and increasingly anxious, began to believe Bolli's insinuations. Her initial distress at Kjartan's departure turned into gnawing uncertainty, then to a deep resentment. Promises he had made felt hollow with each passing season. The Laxdæla saga vividly portrays Gudrun's internal turmoil. During this period, her pride warring with her fading hope. Her strong will, once a source of strength, now made her vulnerable to the sting of perceived betrayal. She was a woman who demanded respect and loyalty, and she believed Kjartan had offered her neither in his prolonged absence. Finally, Bolli made his move. He proposed marriage to Gudrun, pressing his suit with fervor and promising her the unwavering devotion that she now felt Kjartan had withheld. In a moment of despair and wounded pride, convinced that Kjartan had abandoned her, Gudrun accepted Bolli's proposal. The wedding took place, a significant event that spread through the region, cementing a new alliance and sending ripples through the social landscape. This was a decision born of perceived necessity and emotional pain rather than pure affection. Gudrun's heart still held a place for Kjartan, but her injured pride propelled her into a future with Bolli. Then, without warning, Kjartan returned to Iceland, came back a celebrated man, honored by the king, ready to claim his bride and fulfill his promise. The shock of his return was immense. He found Gudrun, the woman he loved, married to his cousin, his foster brother. The betrayal from both Gudrun and Bolli was a bitter pill. His initial joy at returning home turned to crushing disappointment and then to simmering rage. The Laxdæla saga captures Kjartan's heartbreak and the profound sense of personal affront. His return was a triumphant one, but it landed him in a personal tragedy. The tension between Kjartan and Bolli became unbearable. The bond of kinship, once so strong, was now shattered by jealousy and perceived betrayal. Gudrun found herself caught in the middle, her initial regret at her hasty marriage to Bolli intensifying into a deep, abiding sorrow as she saw the pain she had caused. She loved Kjartan. Despite her actions, and her union with Bolli, though legitimate, felt like a constant reminder of her mistake. The feud escalated. Kjartan, unwilling to let the perceived slight stand, began to harass Bolli. He would ride past Bolli's farm with his men, flaunting his strength and challenging Bolli's authority. He engaged in symbolic acts of aggression, such as taking a valuable sword that Bolli had received as a gift, actions designed to provoke and assert dominance. Bolli, for his part, tried to maintain peace, but the constant pressure and the humiliation of being seen as a usurper eventually wore him down. He was a man caught between his love for Gudrun and his fractured loyalty to Kjartan. Gudrun, witnessing the growing animosity between the two men she cared for, became increasingly distressed. Her character, as portrayed in the saga, is complex. She was both the cause and the victim of the escalating conflict. Her unhappiness fueled the tension as both men sought to gain her favor or punish her for her choice. Conflict reached its inevitable tragic climax during a journey. Kjartan, accompanied by his brothers and a few followers, was riding near the farm of Bolli and Gudrun. Bolli, urged on by Gudrun and perhaps by his own desperate desire to end the torment, decided to act. Gudrun's words to Bolli, according to the Laxdæla saga, were powerful and damning. "You will never be considered a man unless you avenge this shame." These words, spoken out of her own tormented pride and regret, pushed Bolli over the edge. Bolli, along with his own brothers and a few men, confronted Kjartan. A violent clash ensued. In the heat of battle, Kjartan refused to fight Bolli, extending his hand in a gesture of reconciliation, or perhaps simply unable to raise a weapon against his foster brother. But Bolli, driven by Gudrun's words and his own tormented emotions, struck Kjartan down. The sagas describe the scene with brutal clarity. Kjartan fell, killed by the hand of the man who was once his closest friend. The death of Kjartan sent shockwaves through Iceland. It was a profound tragedy, a murder that violated the sacred bonds of kinship and friendship. Gudrun's reaction, as depicted in the sagas, was one of immediate and profound regret. She had pushed Bolli to kill the man she truly loved. Her victory, if it could be called, that was hollow and devastating. She wept bitterly, the golden-haired beauty now marred by sorrow and guilt. Bolli, too, was devastated by his actions. He had killed his foster brother, fulfilling a dark prophecy of their shared fate. His subsequent life, though prosperous in many ways, was forever marked by this tragic event. The Laxdæla saga explores the long-lasting consequences of this event, describing the subsequent feuds and the weight of the blood guilt. Gudrun lived a long life after Kjartan's death. She bore Bolli children, including a son named Bolli Bollisson, who would grow up to be a distinguished chieftain. Yet her heart never truly healed. She remained haunted by the memory of Kjartan, her first true love, and the part she played in his demise. Late in her life, according to the saga, when her son Bolli Bollisson asked her which man she had loved the most, she famously replied, "To him I was worst, whom I loved best." This poignant admission, a testament to her enduring sorrow and the deep complexities of her character, revealed that her heart had always belonged to Kjartan despite everything. The story of Gudrun, Kjartan and Bolli is more than just a love triangle. It is a powerful narrative about the destructive force of jealousy, the weight of pride, and the enduring nature of love. Even in tragedy, it illustrates the raw emotions and fierce loyalties that shaped the lives of people in the Viking Age, where love could be as fierce as any battle, and its consequences just as deadly. The detailed narratives found in the Laxdæla saga provide a window into these lives, showing us that even in a world defined by raiding and conquest, the human heart remained a landscape of profound passions and enduring sorrows. The ruins of ancient farmsteads in Iceland, often found near natural springs or fertile valleys, stand as silent witnesses to such tales, where everyday life unfolded against a backdrop of epic human drama. Number 6. Helga the Fair and Gunnlaug's Serpentine. The land of Iceland, stark and beautiful, was often a stage for epic tales of love and rivalry during the Viking Age. In this rugged landscape, reputations were earned and sagas were born from the lives of powerful individuals. Among these stories is the poignant and dramatic tale of Helga the Fair, a woman renowned for her exceptional beauty, and the two poets Gunnlaug, Serpentung, and Hrafn, Onundarson, whose rivalry for her hand would end in tragedy. The Gunnlaug Saga Ormstung, or the Saga of Gunnlaug. Serpentung offers a vivid account of this passionate and ultimately heartbreaking love story. Helga the Fair was the daughter of Thorkill the Black, a prominent chieftain from the Borgarfjörður region. The sagas describe her with an almost ethereal beauty, her hair so long and golden that it would often conceal her entirely. Her eyes were said to be so captivating that no man could look at them without being drawn in. She was a woman of noble birth, refined manners, and a presence that commanded attention wherever she went. Her reputation for beauty spread far and wide, making her a highly coveted bride, a prize sought by the most ambitious and powerful men in Iceland. Into Helga's life came Gunnlaug Illugason, known as Serpent Tongue. For his sharp wit and biting poetic verses, a formidable talent in a society that greatly valued poetic skill, Gunnlaug was a young man of noble lineage, strong and handsome, but also known for his proud and somewhat arrogant nature. He was quick to anger and quick to compose cutting verses, a potent combination that often led him into disputes. Yet his charm and poetic prowess also made him a fascinating figure. He was a wanderer, a traveler, someone who sought fame and adventure beyond the shores of Iceland, a common ambition for ambitious young men of the Viking Age. Gunnlaug first met Helga when he visited her father's home, perhaps for a seasonal feast or a legal assembly. He was instantly captivated by her beauty, and she in turn was drawn to his charisma and unique poetic talent. Their connection was swift and undeniable, a deep attraction that quickly blossomed into love. Gunnlaug, with his characteristic boldness, wasted no time in asking for Helga's hand in marriage. Her father, Thorkel the Black, recognized the potential of this match. Gunnlaug's family was as esteemed as his own, and a union between them would strengthen both lines. However, Thorkel was a cautious man, and he knew Gunnlaug's reputation for wandering and his volatile temperament. Thorkel agreed to the betrothal, but with a significant condition. Gunnlaug must first travel abroad for 3 years to gain further experience and renown. This was a common practice in the Viking Age, a way for young men to prove their worth, gather wealth, and establish connections before settling down. Thorkel hoped this journey would temper Gunnlaug's impetuous nature and prove his commitment to Helga. If Gunnlaug did not return within 3 years, the betrothal would be void and Helga would be free to marry another. Gunnlaug, confident in his love and eager to prove himself, accepted the terms. He swore an oath to Helga, pledging his unwavering loyalty and promising to return for her. Archaeological discoveries of ringed brooches and other personal adornments from Viking Age burials suggest the significance of pledges and gifts exchanged between lovers. Reinforcing the importance of such vows, Gunnlaug set off on his journey, traveling to Norway, Sweden, and even to the court of King Aethelred in England. He distinguished himself wherever he went, composing eloquent poetry, engaging in duels of wit, and fighting bravely in battles. His fame grew, and he was showered with gifts and honors. He learned the ways of courts and the nuances of international relations, becoming a respected skald and a formidable warrior. However, as the 3 years drew to a close, complications arose. Gunnlaug found himself detained at the court of King Aethelred, entangled in duties that prevented his immediate return. Perhaps the king recognized his talent and was reluctant to let him leave, or perhaps unforeseen circumstances, like storms at sea, delayed his journey. Whatever the reason, the promised 3 years passed, and Gunnlaug was still abroad. Back in Iceland, Helga waited. Her patience, like the Icelandic summer, was precious, but finite. The local community observed her situation with keen interest. Her father, Thorkel, was bound by the terms of the agreement. As the deadline passed, the pressure mounted for Helga to find a new husband. She was a woman of immense desirability, and suitors were plentiful. Among these suitors was Kjartan Olafsson, a close friend of Gunnlaug's and a poet in his own right. Though perhaps not as celebrated, Kjartan was a powerful chieftain, handsome and respected, a good match for Helga by all accounts. He too had fallen deeply in love with Helga, and when the 3-year deadline expired, he wasted no time in pressing his suit. Thorkel, seeing no immediate sign of Gunnlaug's return and keen to secure a good match for his daughter, agreed to Kjartan's proposal. Despite her lingering feelings for Gunnlaug, Helga, bound by her father's decision and the societal norms of the time, reluctantly agreed to marry Kjartan. The wedding took place, a grand affair that marked the beginning of a new chapter in Helga's life, a chapter she had not wished for. Soon after, Gunnlaug finally returned to Iceland, full of anticipation and ready to claim his bride. The news that Helga was married to Kjartan struck him with crushing force. His triumphant return turned into bitter despair. He confronted Hrafn, accusing him of treachery and violating their friendship. The air crackled with unspoken animosity, a palpable tension that hung over their every encounter. Gunnlaug's sharp tongue, now fueled by heartbreak and rage, unleashed a torrent of cutting verses against Hrafn, publicly shaming him and further escalating the animosity. Helga found herself in an agonizing position. She was married to Hrafn, yet her heart still yearned for Gunnlaug. The sagas describe her deep unhappiness in her marriage, her beauty dimmed by sorrow. She could not escape the constant reminders of her lost love, especially as the feud between the two men intensified. Presence inadvertently became a constant source of friction, a silent accusation against both her husband and her former betrothed. The rivalry between Gunnlaug and Hrafn quickly moved beyond mere verbal sparring. They challenged each other at the Althing, Iceland's great annual assembly and legislative body, a central gathering place for legal disputes, social events, and often personal feuds. They brought their case before the law, with each side arguing for their right to Helga's hand, or at least for redress for the perceived slights. The legal complexities of Viking Age, Iceland, as detailed in texts like the Graga's Grey Goose Laws, show how disputes over marriage, contracts, and honor were often meticulously debated. These legal battles only served to inflame their personal animosity, making a peaceful resolution impossible. The dispute inevitably escalated to a challenge for a duel, a halmganga, a recognized method for settling disputes in Viking society. The first duel took place at the Althing. However, a clever legal maneuver by Gunnlaug's uncle Snorri the Gothi managed to outlaw such duels in Iceland from that point forward, in a move to prevent further bloodshed within the community. But the feud between Gunnlaug and Hrafn was too deeply rooted to be extinguished by legal decrees. They agreed to travel to Norway, where dueling was still permitted, to settle their dispute once and for all. The final fatal encounter took place in Norway on a small island or holm, a solitary place far from the watchful eyes of their Icelandic kin. The duel was brutal and fierce, a reflection of the intense hatred and love that fueled both men. They fought with all their might, each determined to emerge victorious. Gunnlaug, despite being wounded, managed to wound Hrafn severely. Hrafn, gravely injured, asked Gunnlaug for water. In a momentary lapse of his usual pride, perhaps a flicker of their old friendship, Gunnlaug agreed, fetching water for his dying rival. But as Gunnlaug bent down to offer the water, Hrafn used his last ounce of strength to strike Gunnlaug a final fatal blow with his sword. He inflicted a wound that would eventually lead to Gunnlaug's death. Hrafn himself died shortly after succumbing to his own wounds. Both men perished for the love of Helga the Fair. The news of their deaths traveled back to Iceland, leaving Helga heartbroken and devastated. She had lost the man she truly loved and the man she had married, both victims of a tragic rivalry sparked by her beauty and fate. The saga portrays her profound sorrow, her life irrevocably altered by the choices and circumstances that had led to this double tragedy. Helga the Fair lived on, but her spirit was broken. She eventually married a third time to a chieftain named Thorkel, and bore him children, but her heart remained with the two poets who had died for her. One poignant detail from the saga reveals the depth of her enduring sorrow. It is said that whenever Helga would comb her hair, she would hold a magnificent cloak, a gift from Gunnlaug, close to her. One day, her health failing, she held the cloak and gazed at it, her eyes filled with memories of Gunnlaug. And then she collapsed and died. This final image of her clinging to a tangible symbol of her lost love perfectly encapsulates the enduring tragedy of her story. The tale of Helga, Gunnlaug, and Hrafn is a powerful exploration of love, rivalry, fate, and the destructive power of human passion in the Viking Age. It reminds us that even in a society where honor and martial prowess were paramount, love could be the most dangerous and compelling force of all. The detailed characterizations and vivid descriptions in the Gunnlaug's Saga Ormstungu provide a window into the emotional lives of these historical figures, revealing that their internal struggles were as complex and profound as any modern drama. Runestones found across Scandinavia, often commemorating the deeds and journeys of individuals, sometimes contain verses or imagery that hint at similar tales of love and loss, underscoring the universal nature of these human experiences. Number 5. Harald Fairhair and Gyda. The rugged landscape of Norway, with its deep fjords and towering mountains, was a patchwork of petty kingdoms and warring chieftains during the early Viking Age. A young man named Harald Halfdanson, a chieftain of Vestfold, held ambitions far grander than merely ruling his inherited lands. He dreamt of uniting all of Norway under a single crown, a feat never before accomplished. His ambition was legendary, but the spark that ignited this fire, according to the sagas, was a woman named Gudrun Osvifrsdottir. The Heimskringla, a collection of sagas written by Snorri Sturluson in the 13th century, provides the most famous account of this pivotal encounter. Gyda was no ordinary woman. She was the daughter of King Eric of Hordaland, a powerful chieftain in her own right, known for her sharp intellect, strong will, and fierce independence. She was a woman of spirit, unwilling to simply be a pawn in political marriages. She believed in true greatness, and she sought a partner who reflected that ambition and strength. Her reputation as a woman of discerning judgment was well known among the noble houses of Norway. Harald at this point was a chieftain with growing power and influence. He had already inherited a considerable kingdom and was engaged in expanding his territories. He had heard of Gyda's beauty and spirit, and perhaps driven by both personal desire and political calculation, he sent his men to propose marriage to her. It was a formal offer, as was customary in the Viking Age, a gesture of respect, and a bid for a powerful alliance. Marriage was not just about love, it was about solidifying alliances and securing power. But Gyda's response was anything but conventional. When Harald's messengers presented his proposal, expecting a swift acceptance from a woman of her standing, Gyda delivered a stunning rebuke. She declared that she would not marry a king who ruled over a mere handful of districts. Her words, as recorded in the Heimskringla, resonated with a fierce pride. "I will not marry King Harald until he is king over all Norway." She reportedly added that it seemed remarkable to her that no chieftain existed who would make himself master of all Norway, as Gorm the Old had done in Denmark or Eric in Sweden. This was not a rejection of Harald personally, but a direct challenge to his ambition, a demand for unparalleled greatness. Harald's messengers returned, likely astonished and somewhat dismayed, to deliver Gyda's audacious message. When Harald heard her words, his initial reaction, according to the sagas, was a mix of anger and astonishment. No one had ever dared to challenge him in such a way. This anger quickly transformed into something else, a fierce determination. Gyda's challenge did not diminish him. It ignited a fire within him, transforming his already formidable ambition into an unshakable vow. Harald swore an oath, a solemn and public declaration, that he would not cut or comb his hair until he had united all of Norway under his sole rule. This was a significant vow in Viking society. Hair was often a symbol of status and strength, and to neglect it in such a manner was a powerful, visible commitment. He let his hair grow wild and unruly, earning him the nickname Harald Shockhead. This vow was not merely a romantic gesture. It was a political statement, a declaration of intent to all the chieftains and kings of Norway. He was putting his personal appearance, his very identity, on the line for the sake of his ambition, and for the woman who had dared him to be greater. And so Harald Fairhair embarked on a relentless campaign of conquest. For 10 long years he fought battles, forged alliances, and subdued rival chieftains. His campaigns were marked by both strategic brilliance and brutal effectiveness. He expanded his domain relentlessly, moving from the Vestfold region up the coast, engaging in countless skirmishes and major battles. The sagas describe his steadfast determination, his refusal to yield, and his growing reputation as a formidable warrior and leader. During this period, the political landscape of Norway was in constant flux, with shifting alliances and constant warfare, a testament to the immense challenge Harald had undertaken. Archaeological finds of weapon hoards and fortified strongholds across Norway attest to the widespread conflict of this era. Turning point came with the Battle of Hafrsfjord, a massive naval engagement that took place around 872 AD. This battle, considered by many historians to be the decisive event in the unification of Norway, saw Harald's fleet triumph over a coalition of opposing chieftains. The victory was absolute, cementing Harald's dominance over the country. After this resounding success, Harald finally achieved his goal. He was the undisputed king of all Norway. The sagas describe him then, sending for his barber, finally having his hair cut and combed. From that day forward, he was known as Harald Fairhair, a name that signified his triumph and the fulfillment of his audacious vow. With his kingdom unified and his vow fulfilled, Harald sent for Gyda. She had waited, witnessing from afar the relentless ambition she had sparked. When she finally saw him again, no longer the chieftain of a small district, but the king of an entire nation, it was a meeting of two powerful wills, both having achieved their ambitions. The sagas do not detail the emotional reunion, but the significance of the moment is clear. Gyda had challenged him to greatness, and he had delivered beyond all expectations. Harald Fairhair took Gyda as one of his wives, fulfilling his original intention. It is important to note that polygyny was common among powerful Viking chieftains and kings, a way to secure alliances and produce many heirs. The sagas mention several of Harald's wives and numerous children. While Gyda was one of many, her role in spurring his ambition was unique. She bore him several sons, including Halfdan the Black and Gudrun the Luminous, who would go on to be important figures in their own right, continuing the royal line. The story of Harald and Gyda is not a conventional romance of tender whispered words and stolen glances. It is a love story born of ambition, challenge, and immense respect. Gyda recognized something extraordinary in Harald and dared him to reach for it. Harald, in turn, recognized Gyda's intelligence and spirit, and he rose to her challenge, allowing her words to define his destiny. Their connection was one of powerful individuals who understood each other's drive and desire for greatness. The legacy of Harald Fairhair is immense. He is considered the first king of a unified Norway, a figure whose actions profoundly shaped the course of Norwegian history. And while the historicity of every detail in the sagas is debated by scholars, the narrative of Gyda's challenge and Harald's vow has endured as a powerful origin story for the Norwegian monarchy. It speaks to the idea that behind every great man, there might be a woman whose influence is quietly yet profoundly. The very landscape of Norway, with its scattered Viking Age settlements and the enduring names of places mentioned in the sagas, stands as a testament to the lives and ambitions of individuals like Harald and Gyda, whose personal choices had national consequences. The stories passed down through generations, often recited during long winter nights, kept such narratives alive, demonstrating the powerful interplay between personal desire and historical destiny. Number 4. Eric the Red and Thiodhild. The wind-swept and unforgiving landscapes of Greenland hold secrets of human endurance and powerful bonds forged in the face of immense adversity. It was to this remote and challenging land that Eric Thorvaldsson, known as Eric the Red for his fiery temper and distinctive red hair, led a group of Norse settlers from Iceland. With him on this momentous journey was his wife Thiodhild Gudrun, a woman whose resilient faith and practical wisdom were as vital to the survival of the new settlement as Eric's leadership. The Eric Saga, Rada, or Eric the Red Saga, along with the Greenlandinga Saga, Saga of the Greenlanders. tells the story of their lives interwoven with the discovery and settlement of Greenland. Eric the Red was a chieftain of formidable character, a man of strong will and an equally strong temper. He was born in Norway, but was exiled with his father to Iceland due to violent disputes. In Iceland, his fiery nature continued to land him in trouble. He was involved in a series of killings stemming from feuds over land and property, which ultimately led to his banishment from Iceland for 3 years. It was during this period of exile that Eric, with a small crew, set out to explore the uncharted lands to the west that had been glimpsed by earlier sailors. He found a vast icebound land with fertile coastal fjords, which he shrewdly named Greenland to make it sound more appealing to potential settlers. Theodhild was Eric's wife, a woman of noble lineage and quiet strength. While the sagas primarily focus on the exploits of men, Theodhild emerges as a figure of significant importance. She was a partner to Eric through his tumultuous life, enduring exiles and journeys into the unknown. Her practical skills, her ability to manage a household in harsh conditions, and her unwavering support for Eric were essential to their survival and success. Unlike Eric, who remained steadfastly pagan, Theodhild would become one of the earliest known Christian converts in the Norse settlements of the North Atlantic. This difference in faith would later become a quiet yet significant element of their shared life. When Eric returned to Iceland after his 3-year exile, he was determined to gather settlers and return to Greenland to establish a permanent colony. He painted a vivid picture of the fertile lands and abundant resources, enticing many to join his expedition. In 985 or 986 AD, a fleet of 25 ships set sail from Breiðafjörður, Iceland, bound for Greenland. Only 14 of those ships completed the perilous journey across the stormy North Atlantic, a testament to the brutal challenges of Viking Age seafaring. Theodhild was on one of those successful ships embarking on a new and uncertain life in a distant, uninhabited land. This journey itself speaks volumes, thought her courage and commitment to her husband's vision. Archaeological evidence from the Norse settlements in Greenland, such as the ruins of farmsteads and churches, indicate the resilience required to survive in such an environment. Upon their arrival in Greenland, Eric established the eastern settlement, Oysterbygd, in the sheltered fjords of what is now southern Greenland, founding his farm at Brattahlid. This was to be the heart of the Norse colony, a place where they would build their lives, raise their families, and cultivate the land. Theodhild immediately took on the immense task of establishing a home in this new, wild frontier. This involved organizing the building of a longhouse, managing provisions, overseeing the daily chores, and raising their children, including their famous son, Leif Erikson, who would one day voyage to North America. Life in Greenland was incredibly demanding. The settlers faced harsh winters, limited resources, and the constant threat of starvation. Their existence depended on farming, hunting seals and caribou, and fishing. Eric, as the chieftain, was responsible for the welfare of the entire community, making difficult decisions and maintaining order. Theodhild, however, played an equally crucial role in the domestic sphere. She ensured the household ran smoothly, managed food stores, preserved meat and fish, and prepared clothing from animal hides and wool. Historical accounts and archaeological evidence suggest that women in Viking Age society were often the managers of the domestic economy, their skills essential for survival. As the years passed, a quiet transformation began to occur within the Greenlandic Norse community. Christian missionaries traveling from Europe began to arrive in the North Atlantic settlement, while Eric the Red remained devoted to the Old Norse gods, clinging to the traditions of his ancestors. Theodhild found solace and faith in the new religion. She embraced Christianity with an earnest heart, seeing in it a promise of peace and a different kind of strength. The sagas note that she played a significant role in bringing Christianity to Greenland. Theodhild commissioned the construction of a church at Brattahlid, known today as Theodhild's Church. It was a small, simple structure, likely made of turf and stone, but it represented a profound shift in belief. This act was a bold statement of her faith, especially considering her husband's staunch paganism. The ruins of this church, excavated by archaeologists, are among the earliest known Christian sites in the Americas, a testament to Theodhild's personal conviction and her dedication to her beliefs. She would reportedly walk a significant distance from their main longhouse to the church to pray a testament to her devotion. This separation highlights the divergence in their spiritual paths. The sagas do not record major conflicts between Eric and Theodhild over their differing faiths. It appears to have been a respectful, if sometimes strained, difference of opinion. Eric, while not converting himself, seemingly tolerated Theodhild's piety, recognizing her need for spiritual comfort in their challenging environment. This mutual respect, despite their differing worldviews, speaks to the strength and maturity of their partnership. Their love was not based on shared religious practices, but on shared life, family, and the common goal of establishing a successful settlement. It was a love that endured through banishment, dangerous voyages, and the immense hardships of colonial life. Eric and Theodhild had several children, the most famous being Leif Erikson, Thorvald, and Thorstein, and a daughter named Freydis. These children would play pivotal roles in the expansion of Norse exploration, particularly Leif, who is credited with being the first European to land in North America. Vinland. Theodhild's influence on her children, particularly in instilling a sense of resilience and perhaps some of her forward-thinking spirit, is evident in their subsequent adventurous lives. The story of Eric the Red and Theodhild is not one of grand romantic gestures or tragic love triangles. It is a story of enduring partnership, of a love that was forged in the crucible of survival. Their lives were defined by the challenges of adapting to a new world, of building a community from scratch, and of navigating personal differences in the pursuit of a shared future. Theodhild's quiet strength and unwavering faith, juxtaposed with Eric's bold leadership and traditional beliefs, offer a glimpse into the diverse human experiences within the Viking Age. They show that love in this era was often a practical bond, a partnership for life's challenges sustained by mutual respect and a shared destiny. The scattered ruins of their settlement at Brattahlid, now an UNESCO World Heritage Site, stand as a silent monument to their legacy, a testament to a love that helped establish a new chapter in Viking exploration. They were pioneers, and their relationship, though perhaps less dramatic than some saga narratives, was foundational to the very existence of the Norse presence in Greenland. Number 3. Sigurd and Brynhild. The sagas and epic poems of the Viking Age are rich, with tales of legendary heroes, dragons, and fate, and perhaps no love story is more epic and tragic than that of Sigurd the Dragon Slayer and the Valkyrie, Brynhild. This tale, primarily found in the Volsunga saga and the Poetic Edda, weaves together elements of profound love, betrayal, magic, and a relentless sense of destiny, creating a narrative that continues to resonate centuries later. It is a story not just of individuals, but of forces beyond their control. Sigurd was a hero of unparalleled renown. The son of Sigmund, from the noble Volsung lineage, he was prophesied to be a great warrior, and indeed he achieved fame by slaying the dragon Fafnir, thus gaining a vast treasure, including the cursed ring and Varanat, and wisdom from tasting the dragon's blood. He was described as the epitome of a Viking hero, handsome, brave, and exceptionally strong. He was a man destined for greatness, but also for a fate intertwined with the supernatural. Brynhild, on the other hand, was a Valkyrie, a shield maiden of divine origin, a formidable warrior chosen by Odin to guide the fallen to Valhalla. She was a woman of immense power, courage, and pride, equally renowned for her beauty and her martial prowess. However, she had defied Odin and was punished by being cast into a deep sleep surrounded by a ring of magical flames to awaken only when a hero brave enough to ride through the fire came to claim her. She was a figure of myth and legend, a woman whose destiny was intertwined with the very fabric of the cosmos. Sigurd, after his victory over Fafnir, heard tales of Brynhild, the sleeping Valkyrie, surrounded by fire, driven by a thirst for adventure, and perhaps by a premonition of destiny, he rode his magnificent horse Grani through the flames. Reaching the place where Brynhild lay, he removed her helmet and cut the tight rings of her armor, waking her from her magical slumber. It was a moment of profound connection, an instant recognition of two extraordinary souls destined for each other. They immediately pledged their love and loyalty to each other, exchanging rings and vows. Sigurd gave her the cursed ring Andvarnot as a pledge of his eternal devotion. Brynhild, in turn, imparted to him profound wisdom, teaching him runes and noble virtues. Their love was fated, born of courage and shared greatness, a bond of the deepest spiritual and emotional intensity. However, fate, or perhaps the curses of the dragon's gold, had other plans. Sigurd eventually rode away from Brynhild, promising to return for her. He arrived at the court of King Juki, ruler of the Niflungs, a powerful Germanic tribe. Juki had a wife, Grimhild, a cunning and powerful sorceress, and 3 children, Gunnar, Hogni, and their beautiful sister, Gudrun. Grimhild, recognizing Sigurd's immense power and renown, saw him as a valuable asset to her family. She desired to bind him to her son Gunnar through marriage. Grimhild, through her potent magic, brewed a potion of forgetfulness and gave it to Sigurd. Upon drinking it, Sigurd completely forgot Brynhild and the solemn vows he had made to her. His mind became clouded, his memories of the Valkyrie vanishing as if they had never existed. Under the influence of this potion, he fell deeply in love with Gudrun, Juki's daughter, and married her. Gudrun was a lovely woman, and Sigurd, completely unaware of his past, genuinely loved her and was happy in his new marriage. The sagas often describe magic as a tangible, if inexplicable, force influencing human lives, and Grimhild's potion is a prime example of its power to manipulate fate. Grimhild's ambition did not stop there. She also wanted Brynhild for her son Gunnar, believing that such a powerful and noble woman would elevate the Niflung dynasty even further. However, Gunnar was unable to ride through the ring of flames that still protected Brynhild. As he lacked Sigurd's inherent bravery, or perhaps the strength of his fated connection, Grimhild, always resourceful, devised a plan. She convinced Sigurd, still under the influence of the potion, and now loyal to the Niflungs, to help Gunnar. Through magic, Sigurd shapeshifted, taking on Gunnar's appearance, and rode through the flames to Brynhild, claimed her as Gunnar, and they spent 3 nights together, separated only by a bare sword placed between them, a symbolic gesture of their chaste union as he acted in Gunnar's stead. Took the ring Andvarnot from Brynhild, not recognizing it as the one he had given her, and gave it to Gudrun. Brynhild, believing she had been won by Gunnar, returned to the Niflung court and married him. However, the deception could not last. One day, during a friendly baiting session, Gudrun and Brynhild were arguing over whose husband was the greater hero. Gudrun, in her pride, revealed the truth. It was Sigurd, not Gunnar, who had ridden through the flames and won Brynhild. She even showed Brynhild the ring, Andvarnot, which Sigurd had given her after winning Brynhild. The revelation shattered Brynhild. The memories of her love for Sigurd, of their solemn vows, flooded back to her. She realized she had been cruelly deceived, humiliated, and betrayed by the man she had sworn to love, and by the family who had taken her in. Her pride, her honor, and her love were all deeply wounded. Her fierce Valkyrie nature, once focused on heroism, now turned to a burning desire for vengeance. She became consumed by a dark rage and an unshakable resolve to avenge her betrayal. The Volsunga saga describes her profound psychological torment, her transition from a majestic warrior to a woman driven by destructive despair. Brynhild refused to eat or sleep, wasting away in her grief and anger. She manipulated Gunnar, her husband, twisting his words and appealing to his sense of honor, driving him to kill Sigurd. She told him that she would never be happy, never rest, until Sigurd was dead. Gunnar, caught between his love for Brynhild and his bond with Sigurd, was tormented. He finally yielded to her relentless pressure. He persuaded his younger brother, Gudrun, who had not sworn oaths of brotherhood with Sigurd, to perform the deed, giving him a magic potion to make him brave enough to do it. Gudrun, guttered by the potion, entered Sigurd's chambers and stabbed him in his sleep. Even in death, Sigurd's legendary strength was apparent. With his last breath, he hurled his sword Gram, cutting Gudrun in half. The murder of Sigurd sent shockwaves through the Niflung court. Gudrun, his wife, was utterly devastated by his death. Her grief portrayed as a piercing cry that echoed through the halls. The archaeological discovery of grave goods, like intricately decorated swords and shields, in Viking Age burials, suggest the profound cultural importance of such heroes and their weapons. Brynhild, having achieved her vengeance, felt no triumph, only a profound emptiness and despair. Her beloved was dead, a victim of her own manipulations and the cruel twist of fate. She could not bear to live in a world without Sigurd, a world where her honor was stained and her love betrayed. She declared her intention to join him in death. In a final, desperate act, she took her own life, falling upon a sword and instructing her attendants to build a pyre large enough for both her and Sigurd. Brynhild was burned on the same funeral pyre as Sigurd, a grim and poignant testament to their fated tragic love. Her final words, as recorded in the Volsunga saga, speak of her enduring love for Sigurd and her desire to be with him in the afterlife. Their story became a symbol of a love so powerful it transcended life and death, yet was ultimately undone by treachery and the manipulative nature of fate. The epic cycles of Norse mythology and sagas often explore themes of destiny, honor, and the destructive consequences of betrayal. The tale of Sigurd and Brynhild is not just a love story, it is a profound exploration of human passion, betrayal, and the inescapable power of destiny. It highlights the ideals of heroism and honor in the Viking Age, but also the dark side of ambition and manipulation. Their love, though ultimately tragic, remains one of the most powerful and enduring legends. From the Viking Age, a reminder that even in a world of fierce warriors and epic battles, the human heart remained the most dramatic background of all. Their story, recited around fires and longhouses, or carved into rune stones, served as a powerful cautionary tale about the intertwining of love, fate, and the pursuit of power, echoing through generation. Number 2. Egil Skallagrimsson and Asgerdr Bjornsdottir. Amidst the grand sagas filled with kings, explorers, and mythical heroes, there exist stories of enduring love and partnership that resonate with a different kind of strength, the strength found in shared life, mutual respect, and unwavering support. The Egil's saga, one of the most famous and complex Icelandic sagas, tells the extraordinary life of Egil Skallagrimsson, a formidable warrior and a renowned skald, poet, known for his fierce temper and his equally fierce loyalty. Less dramatic, but no less significant, is his long-lasting marriage to Asgerdr Bjornsdottir, a relationship that reveals a pragmatic yet deeply affectionate bond. Central to Viking Age family life, Egil Skallagrimsson was a man of intense contradictions. He was born into a powerful and tempestuous family. His father, Skallagrim Grefeldalsson, was a fearsome chieftain, and his grandfather, Givaldulf, was rumored to be a spasifter. Egil himself inherited their strength and their violent tendencies. He was a skilled warrior from a young age, engaging in battles and feuds with astonishing frequency. His poetic talent was equally prodigious, allowing him to compose intricate verses both in praise of his allies and in scathing insult to his enemies. He traveled widely, serving kings and fighting in many lands, accumulating wealth and fame, but also making powerful enemies. Asgerdr Bjornsdottir was a woman of noble lineage, related to prominent chieftains and wealthy landowners. She was known for her good sense, her practical skills, and her steady demeanor, qualities that were invaluable in managing a large Viking Age household and navigating the complex social landscape. Unlike Egil, whose life was often defined by external conflict and adventurous journeys, Asgerdr represented stability and the grounding force of home and family. While the sagas typically devote more attention to male exploits, Asgerdr is consistently portrayed as a capable and respected woman, vital to her family's prosperity and well-being. Their path to marriage was not a whirlwind romance, but one grounded in circumstance and familial connection. Egil's brother, Thorolf, was married to Asgerdr's sister, Thorun. When Thorolf tragically died in battle, Egil was obligated by custom to care for his brother's widow and children. This situation, combined with existing familial ties and a clear opportunity for a strong alliance, made a marriage between Egil and Asgerdr a logical and advantageous. While the sagas do not detail a passionate courtship, they imply a foundation of mutual respect and perhaps a quiet attraction. Marriages in the Viking Age were often strategic alliances, but successful ones often developed into deep, affectionate partnerships. The significance of family and lineage in Viking society is constantly underlined in the sagas, providing context for such unions. Egil and Asgerdr settled on the farm of Borgamirum, a prominent estate in western Iceland, which would become their lifelong home and a symbol of their enduring partnership. It was a place where Egil, despite his restless spirit and penchant for travel and conflict, always returned. Asgerdr was the steadfast mistress of Bord. She managed the vast household, oversaw the servants and slaves, directed the farming and livestock, and ensured the smooth running of all domestic affairs. These tasks were not trivial. A Viking Age farm was a complex economic unit, and its success depended heavily on the competence of the housewife. Archaeological digs of longhouse foundations in Iceland demonstrate the size and complexity of these living spaces, requiring significant management. Their marriage was characterized by a deep, quiet understanding and mutual support. Egil, for all his ferocity, placed immense trust in Asgerdr's judgment and relied on her wisdom. When he was away on his often dangerous expeditions, she maintained a home front, ensuring the family's prosperity and safety. When he returned, sometimes wounded, sometimes embroiled in new feuds, she was his anchor, providing comfort, stability, and wise counsel. The sagas, while focusing on Egil's external battles, show how Asgerdr was often his quiet advisor, her calm presence a foil to his tempestuous nature. They had many children together, a testament to their fruitful union and the importance of heirs in Viking society. Their children included Thorstein, Bodvar, Gunnar, Forger, and Helga. The sagas show Egil's deep love for his children, a softer side to his often brutal character. However, their life was not without immense sorrow. They experienced the profound heartbreak of losing several of their children, a common tragedy in an era of high child mortality and frequent dangers. The death of their son Bodvar, who drowned, plunged Egil into such deep despair that he locked himself in his bedchamber, refusing food and drink, contemplating suicide. It was Asgerdr, with her quiet strength and deep understanding of her husband, who coaxed him out of his grief. She convinced him to channel his sorrow into poetry, reminding him of his unique gift. He composed the powerful elegy Sonatorek, The Loss of My Sons, one of the most moving and personal poems in Old Norse literature, a testament to their shared grief and her profound influence on his artistic expression. The sagas also record a moment where Asgerdr played a crucial role in securing Egil's inheritance. After the death of her father, Bjorn, Asgerd's brother, Thorfinn attempted to claim all of the inheritance for himself, disregarding Asgerdr's rightful share. Ever the aggressive advocate confronted Thorfinn, using both his legal knowledge and his intimidating reputation to secure his wife's share. This episode highlights not just Egil's protection of his wife, but Asgurdar's understanding of her rights and her reliance on her husband to ensure they were upheld in a complex legal system. The elaborate inheritance laws in Viking Age, Iceland as detailed in law codes, show the importance of such disputes. Their relationship was built on a foundation of respect, loyalty, and a shared commitment to their family and their farm. It was not a love that sought grand romantic gestures, but rather a love that manifested in daily support, practical partnership, and shared resilience in the face of life's numerous challenges. Asgurdr provided the stability and domestic strength that allowed Egil to pursue his adventurous life, and in turn, he offered her protection and a powerful family name. Egil lived to an old age, his ferocity undiminished even by blindness and infirmity. Asgurdr remained by his side throughout his long life, tending to him, caring for him, and seeing him through his final years. The saga ends with Egil's death, but the image of their enduring partnership of a strong woman anchoring a tempestuous man remains. Their story exemplifies a different kind of love in the Viking Age, one that is pragmatic, resilient, and deeply rooted in the shared experiences of a lifetime. The story of Egil and Asgurdr offers a valuable counterpoint to the more dramatic faded romances of the sagas. It reveals that many relationships in the Viking Age were enduring partnerships built on mutual respect, shared responsibilities, and the quiet affection that grows from navigating life's complexities. Their home at Borg, now an archaeological site, serves as a physical reminder of the lives lived there and of the profound, often unrecorded strength of the domestic bonds that formed the bedrock of Viking society. These sagas, often recited orally for generations before being written down, passed on not just tales of battles, but also the nuanced stories of human connection and emotional resilience. Number 1. Hallgerdr Höskuldsdottir and Gunnar Hamundarson. In the sweeping landscape of the Icelandic sagas where honor, vengeance, and fate intertwine with daily life, few relationships burn with such intense passion and end in such profound tragedy as that of Hallgerdr Höskuldsdottir. Their story, a central thread in the monumental Yol's saga, offers a complex portrayal of love, pride, and the destructive power of escalating feuds. It is a love story that was vibrant, yet ultimately overshadowed by their individual strong wills and the societal pressures of the Viking Age. Hallgerdr Höskuldsdottir was a woman of legendary beauty, striking and captivating, known for her tall stature and her long, beautiful hair that reached the ground. Her looks, however, were matched by an equally formidable and often unpredictable personality. She was proud, independent, and fiercely determined, unwilling to submit to any man or circumstance she deemed beneath her. Her early life was marked by tragedy and a pattern of violence. She had been married twice before, Gunnar, and both of her previous husbands had died violently at the hands of her foster father, Theolstolf, in quarrels instigated or influenced by Hallgerdr herself. This history gave her a reputation for being a difficult woman, one whose beauty concealed a dangerous spirit. The sagas often portray such powerful women as both admirable and formidable. Gunnar Hamundarson, on the other hand, was an embodiment of Viking heroism. He was the greatest warrior of his time, skilled with sword and axe, swift and agile, and possessed of unmatched physical prowess. The Njals saga describes him as handsome, courageous, and generous, a beloved figure who inspired loyalty. He was a man of integrity, a defender of justice, and a loyal friend. He was famed for his gentleness in times of peace, yet utterly fearsome in battle. He lived at Helleandi, a prominent farm in the valley of Flutchlid, a place of beauty that mirrored his own noble qualities. Gunnar first encountered Hallgerdr at the Althing, the annual assembly where people gathered for legal proceedings, trade, and social events. Despite her notorious reputation, Gunnar was immediately captivated by her beauty. He saw in her a fire and spirit that matched his own, a compelling challenge to his noble, yet perhaps conventional, life. He fell deeply in love with her, drawn to her fierce independence and striking appearance. Their attraction was instantaneous and powerful. A meeting of two exceptionally strong wills, the very speed of their connection, despite the warnings and Hallgerdr's past hints at the intensity of their bond. Despite the warnings from his wise friend Jarl Thorgeirsson, who foresaw the potential for great trouble due to Hallgerd's temperament and her past, Gunnar chose to follow his heart. He proposed marriage to Hallgerdr, and she accepted. The wedding took place, a grand affair that united two of the most prominent families in Iceland. It was a union born of passionate love, but one shadowed by the dark predictions of their fate. The elaborate descriptions of such feasts and ceremonies in the sagas, often involving rich clothing and abundant food, are supported by archaeological finds of high status. Viking Age sites their marriage began with intense love and affection. Gunnar adored Hallgerdr, and she in turn seemed to be deeply devoted to him. They lived together at Heilaerendi, and for a time it seemed as though their love might overcome all the dire predictions. However, the sparks of Hallgerdr's contentious nature were never fully extinguished. The conflict that would ultimately consume their relationship began not with them, but with a petty dispute between Hallgerdr and Jarl's wife, Bergthora. Bergthora was a proud and strong woman in her own right, devoted to her husband and family. The friction between the two women began over a seemingly trivial matter of precedence, at a feast, escalating into a bitter rivalry. This rivalry manifested in a series of tit-for-tat killings of household servants, each killing demanding an equal or greater response to maintain honor and avoid shame. Hallgerdr instigated these killings, prompting Bergthora to retaliate, escalating the feud cycle that was so characteristic of Viking Age society. While Gunnar and Jarl tried to mediate and settle these disputes with payments of compensation, wergild, Hallgerdr would often secretly undermine their efforts, refusing to accept the settlements or provoking further conflict. This pattern continued, eroding the peace and trust between the two families. Gunnar often found himself caught between his love for Hallgerdr and his sense of honor, justice, and his friendship with Njals. He would pay the compensation, trying to mend the breaches, but Hallgerdr's stubborn pride and desire for ultimate victory often thwarted his efforts. Her actions led to a deep rift between the two prominent families, setting the stage for greater tragedies. Complex legal system of the Icelandic Commonwealth, as depicted in the sagas, shows the meticulous efforts made to avoid blood feuds, often unsuccessfully when individuals refused to accept arbitration. The escalating feuds, though initially stemming from household squabbles, eventually drew in a wider network of kin and allies. Gunnar, despite his peace-loving nature, was repeatedly forced to defend himself and his family against attacks from those who had been provoked by Hallgerdr's actions or by the wider implications of the servant slayings. He became involved in a series of defensive battles, always emerging victorious. Due to his unparalleled fighting skills, however, these victories came at a cost. His enemies grew in number and determination, culminating in a fateful decision by the Althing. Due to his involvement in multiple killings, even if in self-defense, Gunnar was sentenced to 3 years of exile. He accepted the judgment and prepared to leave Iceland with his family. As they rode away from Heilaerendi, Gunnar turned in his saddle to gaze upon his beloved farm, a place of beauty and peace that he might never see again. The sagas describe the profound beauty of the landscape at that moment, illuminated by the sun. Making him reconsider, he uttered the famous line, "Fair is the hillside, so that I have never seen it so fair. And the cornfields white and reaped, and the hay mown, and I will ride home and not fare into exile at all." Hallgerdr, despite her strong will, was tied to Gunnar by deep love and fierce loyalty. She chose to support his decision, to defy the exile, knowing full well the dire consequences. By refusing to leave, Gunnar became an outlaw, making him vulnerable to attack by anyone without legal protection. This act, born of love for his homeland and perhaps a desire to protect his family on his own terms, sealed his fate. He was effectively inviting his death. The attack came when a large group of his enemies, including many who had suffered losses at Hallgerdr's hands, surrounded his farm. Gunnar defended himself bravely, fighting from his longhouse, using his unmatched archery skills to fell many attackers. His bowstring broke during a siege. In his desperate moment, he turned to Hallgerdr, pleading with her for 2 strands of her long, beautiful hair to mend his bowstring. This was the moment of ultimate reliance, a desperate plea for her very essence to save him. Hallgerdr's response was chilling. She refused him. Her words, as recorded in the Njals saga, were laced with bitter memory. "Does anything depend on it?" she asked. Gunnar replied that his life depended on it. She then delivered the crushing blow. "Then I will remind you of the slap you gave me, and I care not whether you hold out long or short." This referred to an earlier incident, a dispute over a stolen cheese where Gunnar had slapped her, a rare instance of him losing his temper with her. In this moment of ultimate crisis, her pride, her deep-seated resentment, and perhaps a fatalistic acceptance of their destiny overrode her love. Gunnar was left defenseless. He was soon overwhelmed. Hallgerdr watched from inside the house as the greatest warrior of his age was brought down. Her refusal, born of a single act of violence against her and her enduring pride, was a pivotal moment, a stark illustration of the destructive power of personal animosity and the unbreakable nature of a deeply wounded spirit. Hallgerd lived on a figure of continued controversy and a widow haunted by the choices she had made. Her children, with Gunnar, particularly their son Höskuldr, carried the burden of their legacy and the need for vengeance. The Njals saga continues for many chapters, detailing the prolonged blood feuds that ensued from Gunnar's death, a testament to the far-reaching consequences of such a prominent chieftain's demise. The love story of Hallgerdr and Gunnar is a powerful and complex narrative. It is a tale of profound attraction, passionate devotion, and ultimately a tragic clash of wills and the inescapable consequences of a deeply ingrained culture of honor and vengeance. It shows that even in the most intense relationships, individual pride and past grievances could hold a devastating power, leading to the destruction of what was once most cherished. The Njals saga, with its psychological depth and intricate portrayal of human motivations, continues to fascinate, revealing that the emotional lives of people in the Viking Age were as rich and tumultuous as the dramatic landscapes they inhabited. The ruins of Helidurandi, still visible today, stand as a poignant monument to this epic and heartbreaking tale of love, pride, and fate.